Hello students, welcome to Extramarks. My name is Deepak Sharma and I'm a mathematics faculty at Extramarks. I've been a maths mentor to thousands of JEE, NTSC, KVPY and Olympiad aspirants over the past 8 years. So today I'm here to explain you about the most important segment of the most awaited and the biggest scholarship test in India, which is EYSE, Extramarks Young Scholars Exam. So today in this video, I'm going to explain you about the strategies which you should be following to boost up your performance in EYSE examination, and also I will be giving you a brief overview of the concepts which you should not be skipping while preparing for your examination. Why? Because thousands of students have already enrolled for this examination and many more are enrolling. So if you have not enrolled for this examination, then first enroll for the examination. Okay, so students, now I'm going to discuss the points which you should be keeping in your mind while preparing for EYSE. Okay, so first point is going to be the pattern of EYSE examination. Why I'm saying you should be knowing pattern of EYSE examination? Why? Because when you are going to attempt the examination, then you should not be wasting too much of your time for understanding the rules, understanding the pattern which they are going to follow. So you should be very much clear with all these things earlier itself. Now, second point which you are going to keep in your mind is going to be the important chapters and topics. Moreover, you can say the particular concept from which a faculty can frame a question. So this concept should be very much clear to you. Third point which you are going to keep in your mind is going to be revise all the concepts of your previous class. Why? Because if you are writing examination for 8th class, then you will be asked with the syllabus of 7th class. Now, fourth concept which you are going to keep in your mind, you have to write down each and every property, each and every formula, each and every concept, each and every theorem for memorizing it on the paper. Why? Because hand and mind coordination should always be there when we are practicing for mathematics. Now, once you are done with this particular thing, which fourth point, writing down and memorizing each and every formula, then you have to practice. For practicing, what you can do, you can solve the sample papers or you can take the mock test from Extramarks app itself. Okay, and one more concept I would like to add over here, that why I'm asking you to write down all the properties and formula. Why? Because what happens when you are facing the examination, maybe you will be knowing all the concept, you know how to solve the question, but if you will forget the formula, then you won't be able to attempt that question, and one question when you are not attempting, then it is going to be a loss of 4 marks for you. Okay, so now I'm going to discuss with pattern of EYSE examination. Okay students, so let us understand the pattern of EYSE examination for class 8 to class 11. Okay, so if I'm talking about this EYSE examination, so the paper is going to be consisting of 3 sections. First section will be for science, second is going to be mathematics, and third is going to be mental ability. So if I'm talking about the total number of questions which are going to be asked in this paper is going to be 75. So in this particular paper, you will be asked with 75 questions. Okay, now one important thing which I would like to tell you guys is going to be, if you are writing the examination for 8th class, then you will be asked the questions from 7th class syllabus. If you are writing the examination for 9th class, then you will be asked with the questions from 8th class and so on. So this is the first important thing which you should keep in your mind. Okay, so what we have understood till now, if I'm talking about the pattern, then there will be 3 sections. First section will be science, second is going to be mathematics, and third is going to be mental ability. And total number of questions will be asked 75 questions. And one more important thing is going to be for 8th class student, there will be questions from 7th class. So you have to prepare from 7th class concepts. Okay, now if I'm talking about particular division of the 75 questions, so in science there will be 45 questions. Now this 45 questions will be further divided in again 3 parts. For physics you will be asked with 15 questions, for chemistry again you will be asked with 15 questions, and for biology also you will be asked with 15 questions. So total 45 questions will be asked in science. Now if I'm talking about mathematics, so in mathematics they will ask you 20 questions. Okay, if I'm talking about mental ability, then in mental ability they will ask you 10 questions. Okay, so if I'm adding all of them, that is 45 plus 20 plus 10, which is going to be 75 questions they will ask you in this paper. So second concept is going to be total number of questions. Now if I'm asking you what is going to be the marking scheme for this examination, then total marks for this particular exam is going to be 300. Now how that division is coming in existence? For 75 questions and for particular single question you will be given with plus 4 marks if you are attempting it correctly. Now if you are not attempting it correctly, then there will be no negative marking. Mark it, students, there will be no negative marking. So one more thing you will keep in your mind, that you have to attempt each and every question. Do not skip a single question. Why? Because it can be a correct even if you guess. So now next thing is going to be time allocation for this particular examination. So there will be 120 minutes for solving this paper. If I am dividing this 120 with 75, then it's going to be 1.6 minutes. So for solving a particular question, you will be getting 1.6 minutes. It is not like that, students. What I'm saying, this 1.6 minutes you have to utilize in a proper manner. How you are going to utilize this 1.6 minutes in a proper manner? You can attempt the questions which are from biology. Why? Because they are going to be factual based questions. So you can attempt it in a lesser time. And the time which you are getting from that particular question, you can utilize that in this physics or in mathematics or in solving mental ability questions. Okay, so this is all about the pattern of EYSE examination for class 8 to class 11. Now I'm going to discuss about the important chapters and important concepts which you should not skip while preparing for your EYSE 2020. So let us focus over here. Now if I'm talking about important chapters and important topics, so I have given a complete table of the syllabus of class 7th, syllabus of class 8 and syllabus of class 9th. Okay, so what you can do, you can take a screenshot of this screen if you are not having the syllabus of your previous classes. Why? Because if you are writing the examination, EYSE examination for class 8, then they will ask you the questions based on class 7. If you are writing the examination for class 9, then they will ask you the questions based on class 8. So this is going to be the syllabus which they are going to follow to prepare the paper. Now, if I am talking about the student who is writing the examination for class 10, then the syllabus is going to be from class 9. So this is going to be the syllabus for class 8, this is going to be the syllabus for class 9th, and this is going to be the syllabus for class 10th. Now I am going to discuss individually, class-wise, all the important concept, all the important part which you should cover. Okay, so first I am going to talk about important concepts of class 8. Very first chapter, if I am talking about class 8, then they will ask you, remember it, they will ask you the questions based on 7th class. So first chapter of 7th class is integers. So in this chapter, you have to at least practice the questions based on these 4 concepts. First is going to be additive identity. Second is going to be product of 3 or more negative integers. For example, if I am talking about -2 multiplied by -3 multiplied by -5 multiplied by -6. So how you are going to perform this particular product? So what you should do, if you are getting even numbers, look, 1 time, 2 time, 3 time and 4 time. So if you are getting even number of time negative sign, and when you are multiplying it, then it is going to be cancelled out. That means the product of negative quantity with negative quantity will always a positive quantity. So when you are multiplying these these four things, then what you should do, this multiplication will give you a positive quantity and this is also going to give you a positive quantity. So minus and minus multiplication over here give you plus, and over here also it will give you a plus sign. So 2 multiplied by 3 will be 6 and 5 multiplied by 6 is going to be 30. Then further you can multiply these two things, which is going to be 6 multiplied by 30, which is going to be 180. So this kind of basic questions can also be there, and they can give you a bigger expression which you have to solve it. Now next thing which you have to remember is multiplicative identity. This is also going to be a very important concept which you should not skip, and you have to practice a lot of questions on these 4 segments at least. It doesn't mean that you are going to skip the remaining concepts. You have to read out all the topics, all the concepts from this particular chapter. But the probability of getting a question from this chapter is going to be these 4 topics. Okay, Now if I'm talking about second concept, which is going to be fractions and decimals. So in this chapter, if I'm talking about the important concepts or where from a teacher can frame a good questions. So one thing is going to be division of fraction by another fraction. Let me explain you it over here. If I'm saying there is one fraction a by b and I'm going to divide it by another fraction which is c by d, then what you have to remember over here, this can also be written as a by b multiplied by d by c. That means the denominator will reverse and it will become a multiplication. So this kind of concepts you have to keep in your mind while preparing for this particular chapter, which is fractions and decimal, and importantly I'm talking about divisions of a fraction by another fraction. The second point which you should be keeping in your mind is going to be multiplication and division of decimal numbers. What does it mean? If I'm taking, let's say, 2.5 and I'm dividing it by 0.5, what I'm doing, I'm taking one decimal number and I'm taking another decimal number and I'm dividing this decimal with this one. So how we can perform this one? If I'm going to remove this, then this will become 25 by 10, and if I'm going to remove this one, so this is going to be 5, and over here I will get a 10. So this is going to be nothing but 10 and 10 cancel, and 5 5s are 25. So final answer for this is going to be 5. So this kind of question practicing you should be doing for this particular segment. Okay, so the second point also you are going to keep in your mind while preparing for fractions and decimals. Now let us talk about the third chapter of 7th class, which is going to be data handling. Now please understand, data handling, there will be graphs, there will be bar graphs, but the most probable thing which they can ask you is going to be mean, question based on mean, question based on median, and question based on mode. So if I'm talking about mean, what does it mean by finding mean, or it is also called as arithmetic mean. So arithmetic mean or simply mean is going to be the average of the data given over there. That means sum of all the data divided by total number of data. And the same way, median is going to be that quantity which is going to divide the given data after arranging it in increasing or decreasing order in two equal groups. And the same way when I'm talking about mode, so this is going to be the most frequently used data. That means if I'm writing the data like this 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, and I'm asking you what is going to be the mode of this data, then mode of this data is going to be 1. Why? Because most used number over here in this sequence is going to be 1. So you have to focus on these three concepts while preparing for this chapter, data handling. Now let us talk about the fourth concept, which is going to be simple equation. When I'm talking about simple equation, then you should be knowing how to solve a given equation. For an example, if I'm taking, let us say, 3x plus 7 is equals to 5 by 2. Now how you can solve this? Either you can take this 7 this side, okay, transfer it over here and take the LCM, one method, or simply what you can do, you can cross multiply this 2 over here and this will become nothing but 6x plus 14 is equals to 5. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to transfer this 14 this side, so this will become nothing but 6x is equals to 5 minus 14, and finally 5 minus 14 is going to be nothing but minus of 9, okay, and this is equals to 6x. So finally when I'm talking about this data, so this x is going to be minus 9 by 6, which is going to finally give you the number minus 3 by 2. Is it perfectly fine? So this kind of questions you should be able to solve when we are talking about the chapter simple equations. So let us talk about the next concept, which is going to be lines and angles. So when I'm talking about this particular chapter, then the very important part from which examiner can ask you the question is going to be angles made by transversals. What does it mean by transversal? If I'm taking two lines like this way, okay, so if I'm making a line like this, okay, so this is called as a transversal. So you should be knowing all the terminology which we are using over here, internal angles, okay. So this all the angles you should be knowing each and every property about this transversal. You should be focusing well and you have to prepare the questions based on this kind of concept, okay. So now next, if I'm talking about the chapter triangles and its properties. So the most probable part of asking a question from this chapter is going to be finding angles with the help of properties. That means if I'm talking about the properties which are going to be followed with the triangles, if you know those properties, then you will be able to solve the questions very faster manner way when it is asked from this segment. Now another thing is going to be right angle triangles and Pythagoras property. So when I'm talking about a right angle triangle, then if I'm saying this is a right angle triangle and this is over here 90 degree, then if I'm talking about this angle over here, let us say this is theta, then opposite to this theta is called as perpendicular and this is called as base, or you can also say adjacent, and this is going to be hypotenuse. Okay, and what is Pythagoras theorem over here, or Pythagoras property over here? That square of this hypotenuse will be equals to sum of the squares of perpendicular and the base, which is going to b square plus b square. So this is a very important property which is going to be utilized for framing a question. So you should be working on this particular segment as well as the questions based on finding angles with help of properties. Okay, so next chapter is going to be congruence of triangle. Over here the questions can be asked directly from the property based concepts. Okay, for an example, if I'm saying from which property you are proving that these two triangles are going to be congruent to each other, that means side, side, side. This kind of properties you have heard about congruency of a triangle. So you should be focusing on all the properties of this particular chapter. Now when I'm talking about the next part, which is going to be the comparing quantities. So in this they can ask you the questions based on converting decimals to percentage. That means if they are giving you any number, let us say 0.57, and they will ask you convert this number into a percentage. So you should be knowing how to convert it. Second thing they can ask you is converting percentage to fractions or decimals. That means reverse thing. So this is going to be the second part from which they can ask you the questions. Third is going to be increase or decrease as percentage. What is going to happen? They will give you some data and they can ask you what is the increase percentage. That means what is the increment happened in this particular question or this given data. And next type of questions which they can ask you is going to be interest for multiple years. That means how to find simple interest. You should be focusing on that concept, and also you should be solving the questions based on interest of multiple years. Okay, so let us go to next slide. 9th chapter of 7th class, if I'm talking students. So in 9th chapter, it is rational numbers. So when I'm talking about rational numbers, so any number of the form p by q, where q and p both are integers and q is not equals to 0. These kind of numbers are called as rational numbers. And in this chapter, what they are going to ask you, or what is the important part, they will give you two rational numbers. Let us say 1 by 2 is one number and another number is nothing but, let us say, 3 by 5, something like this. These two numbers are given to you and they will ask you insert 5 rational numbers or give me 3 rational numbers between these two numbers. So you should be knowing how to find those 3 rational numbers between these two quantities. So this kind of questions are very important for this particular chapter. Now if I'm talking about another chapter which is going to be practical geometry. So in practical geometry, students, if I'm talking, then generally what we do, we make the diagrams with the help of given data. But over here, it's an objective pattern examination. So you won't be able to draw the particular diagram, or with the help of given data, you are not going to actually construct the diagram. But based on the property or data, they can ask you the factual questions, or if they can ask you the questions like this, there is a quadrilateral with the 3 sides A, B and C. You are having the measures of A, you are having a measure of B, and you are having the measure of C, and maybe they are going to give you these 2 angles. Maybe in this kind of question they can ask you what is going to be the length of this next slide. So this kind of questions are very important when I'm talking about practical geometry. Now next chapter is going to be perimeter and area. So when I'm talking about this particular chapter, then in this chapter the question can be asked from area of parallelogram. So you should be knowing the formulas of area of parallelogram as well as area of shaded part. That means maybe they can give you some diagram like this, okay, and they will set this part and they can ask you what is going to be the area of this particular shaded part, and some further data which is going to be required to calculate this particular shaded area will be given in the question itself. So this kind of questions will be very important when I'm talking about the chapter perimeter and area. Now if I'm talking about next concept, which is going to be algebraic expressions. So in this particular chapter, rules for number patterns, this is going to be very important part when I'm talking about the 7th class syllabus and specifically algebraic expressions. Algebraic expressions are nothing but of the form like 2x plus 3y or maybe like 5x squared plus 7, something like that will be considered as algebraic expression. But important part from where they can ask you the questions is going to be rules for number patterns. Okay, now if I'm talking about the next chapter, which is going to be exponents and powers, so in this 3 important parts from where they can from a question is going to be laws of exponent. For an example, if I'm saying a power m multiplied by a power n, so if the bases are same, then powers are going to be added. So this can be written as a power m plus n. So you should be knowing all the properties such like this and which are considered as laws of exponents. Now further thing is going to be decimal number system. So you should be knowing how to represent it. And next concept is going to be expressing large numbers in the standard forms. What does it mean? If I'm saying express 5008 in standard form, then what I can do, I can write it whenever I'm representing any number, then it should be of the form, I'm writing it over here, it should be of the form a multiplied by 10 raised to the power b, where this b can be any integer quantity, and this a when I'm talking, it is going to lie between 1 to 9. Okay, so when I'm talking about a standard form, then I cannot make it 0. That means I cannot make it 0.005 or something like that. What I require to make it, I require 5 over here. So when I want to make it 5 point something, okay, when I want to make 5 point something, am I having that point over here? No. So if I'm making it 5 point something, so this can be written as 5 point this. But if I'm going to remove it, then this is going to be 1000 over here. Okay, are you understanding what I'm doing? Is 5008 and I'm required to write it in the standard form, such like this. Okay, so for that what I'm doing, I'm writing it like this, 5 point, my requirement is making it 5 point something. So 5.008 if I'm writing, but that is not given over here. So what I'm going to do, if I'm going to remove this decimal point over here, then there will be 3 zeros in the denominator. But do I have these 3 numbers over here? No. So these 3 numbers additionally I have introduced over here. So I'm going to balance it. So can I write this number 5008 such as 5008 divided by 1000 multiplied by 1000? Yes, it's very easy. Now this can further be written as nothing but 5.008 multiplied by this 1000 can be written as 10 raised to the power 3. So finally the number 5008 can be written as 5.008 multiplied by 10 raised to the power 3. So now if I'm talking about the another concept which is going to be symmetry. So you should be knowing what is going to be the concept of symmetry. You have to follow each and every part of this chapter, but specifically the probability of asking your questions is going to be more from the rotational symmetry. That means if I'm giving you a figure like this and I'm saying I'm rotating this figure by 90 degree. So 90 degree in which direction, it is also important. So if I'm making it anti-clockwise rotation, so if I'm giving you this figure and I'm rotating it anti-clockwise by 90 degree, then the figure which I'm going to obtain is just rotated by 90 degree. So this side will come up. So this will become somewhat of the form like this. Is it perfectly fine? And next chapter and the last chapter of 7th class is going to be visualizing solid shapes. So in this, the important part is going to be visualizing or viewing different sections of a given solid. That means making the net diagram and understanding that particular solid. Okay, so this is all about the important concepts which you have to cover. And so students, now I'm going to discuss about the important concepts of class 9 or for class 9. Okay, so the concept which they are going to ask you is going to be rational numbers. So from this chapter, the important part is going to be inserting 2 or more numbers between given 2 rational numbers. Now if I'm talking about the next chapter, is going to be linear equations in one variable. So you should be knowing how to solve the linear equation and how to reduce the given equation in the form of linear equations. So from there they can ask you a question. Then next chapter if I'm talking is going to be understanding quadrilaterals. So from here the questions based on some of the measures of the exterior angles of a polygon. From this part they can frame a good question. So you should be practicing more from this particular concept. Now if I'm talking about fourth chapter, which is going to be practical geometry, again from practical geometry there can be a question asked which is data based. Okay, so now if I'm talking about the fifth chapter, which is going to be data handling, then again the questions which they can ask you is going to be based from the bar graphs or from the pie charts. Okay, so this is included over here. Okay, now next chapter is going to be square root and squares of given number. So from here if I'm talking, then there are two important concepts on which you should be practicing more. First concept is going to be Pythagorean triplet. For an example, if I'm taking a right angle triangle, let us say this side is 3, this is going to be 4, then this is going to be 5. Then the numbers 3, 4, 5 is going to be called as Pythagorean triplet. Now if I'm talking about next concept from which they can ask you the question is going to be finding square roots. Okay, so these two concepts are very important when I'm talking about the chapter squares and square roots. In the same manner, if I'm talking about next chapter, which is going to be cubes and cube roots. So from here, finding the cube root, from this concept they can ask you a good question. Now next chapter if I'm talking, then it is going to be comparing quantities. Now there is a variety of questions they can ask you from this chapter. First part is going to be finding the increase or decrease percentage. Second concept is going to be finding cost price, selling price, or profit percentage or loss percentage. Third concept is going to be sell tax, value added tax, goods and service tax, and fourth concept is going to be compound interest. So there are a variety of concepts, and each and every concept given over here is very important. Now again, focus students, what I'm going to tell you over here, when I'm talking about number of questions they are going to ask you in mathematics. So the total number of questions are going to be 20, and there are total 16 chapters when I'm talking about the syllabus of 8th class. So if I'm dividing even a single question from a single chapter, then there will be 16 chapters covered. Okay, why? Because there are 16 chapters given in the 8th class. Now from where the probability is more to ask a question again. So one thing is going to be when I'm combining these two concepts. So one question they can ask you from here, or second question again they can ask you from this chapter. So this is going to be one more probable case for the complete chapter, again I'm saying. Then if I'm talking about the second probability, so the second probability is going to be comparing quantities. That means you can get two questions from these two chapters and two questions from again comparing quantities. In the same manner, if I'm talking about the further chapters, so the next chapter is going to be algebraic expression and identities, which is again a very important concept, from where the important part of this chapter is going to be multiplying a polynomial by polynomial or dividing a polynomial by another polynomial, and again standard identities. So they can ask you the questions based on standard identities also. Now next chapter if I am talking, then there is going to be visualizing solid shapes. So from here, views of 3D shapes is going to be an important concept from which they can frame a good question. Next chapter is going to be mensuration. So from here if I am talking, then you should be knowing the formulas, each and every formula, like area of trapezium, area of a polygon, surface area of cube, surface area of cuboid, surface area of cylinder, volume of cube, volume of cuboid, etc. So this is again going to be a very important chapter. Why? Because if I'm talking about 20 questions, then already we have discussed in the last slide that there are two probable chapters from which you can get two questions. Then third chapter, which is going to be very important, and from where they can ask you again one more question, is going to be mensuration. Okay, now if I'm talking about the fourth chapter simultaneously, then fourth chapter can be compromising this 9th and 14th chapter. That means they can ask you the questions, two questions from either algebraic expression or factorization. So again this factorization is going to be very important. Okay, now next chapter again when I'm talking is going to be exponents and powers, where laws of exponents is very useful. Use of exponents to express small numbers in a standard form is very important concept from which they can ask you the question. Now next chapter is going to be direct and inverse ratio, and specifically in this chapter the question based on inverse proportion is going to be very important. So you should be practicing more on this part. Then factorization, as I said, it is going to be very important. So in this you should be knowing factorization by regrouping the terms, factorization using the identities, factors of the form x plus a and multiplied by x plus b, and division of algebraic expressions. That means if you are given with a cubic polynomial and you are dividing it with a linear polynomial, you should be knowing how to perform that division. The next chapter is going to be introduction to graphs. So in this particular chapter, questions based on bar graphs and pie charts, as well as location of a point, specifically comparing coordinates, is going to be an important segment from where they can ask you the question. So next chapter is playing with numbers, in which they can ask you the questions from numbers in general form or letters for digits. They will be giving you letters in the place of digits. And next concept from where they can ask you the question is going to be test of divisibility. So you should be knowing the divisibility test of 2, 3, 5, 6, 9, like this. Okay, so next important concept are going to be for class 10th. So students, let us discuss about the important concepts for class 10th, which are going to be from syllabus of class 9. So first chapter is going to be number system. So if I'm talking about the chapter number system, then there are two important concepts from which they can ask you a question, which are going to be irrational numbers and laws of exponents for real numbers. The same way, if I'm talking about the next chapter, which is going to be polynomials, again there are four important concepts from where they can ask you a question, which is going to be zeros of a polynomial, remainder theorem, factorization of polynomials, and algebraic identities. The same manner, if I'm talking about the next chapter, which is going to be coordinate geometry. So in this chapter, they can ask you a question from Cartesian system. That means you should be knowing about the Cartesian plane, how to draw x versus y plane, how to write x and y coordinate on that plane. Okay, so the next chapter is going to be linear equations in two variables. So the important part from this particular chapter is going to be solution of a linear equation. That means you should be knowing how to solve a linear equation. For an example, if I'm giving you linear equation in two variables, so for finding those two data x and y, you should be having two equations, and by solving these two equations you will be getting the values of x and y. So this kind of questions you should be practicing more. And next concept is going to be graph of linear equation in two variables. That means you should be knowing how to draw the graph of a linear equation. Next chapter is going to be introduction to Euclid's geometry. So when I'm talking about this particular chapter, then you should be remembering all the 5 postulates of the Euclids, from where they can ask you a question. Next chapter when I'm talking is going to be lines and angles, and important part of this chapter is going to be parallel lines and a transversal. That means if I'm making two lines, parallel lines over here like this way, and if I'm making a line like this way, so this is going to be transversal to these two parallel lines, and you should be knowing all the terms and properties based on this concept. Okay, so next they can ask you the question based on theorems also. So these two are very important for the chapter lines and angles. So the next chapter is going to be triangles. So when I'm talking about this chapter, then they can ask you the concepts, congruency of a triangle, some properties of a triangle, RHS congruence rule, and the questions based on inequalities in a triangle. So these 4 are very important when I'm talking about triangles. The next chapter is going to be quadrilaterals. Okay, so when I'm talking about quadrilateral, then these 3 properties or these 3 concepts should be in your mind, and you should be practicing more on these 3 particular concepts. First concept is going to be angle sum property of a quadrilateral. Second is going to be properties of a parallelogram, and third is going to be midpoint theorem, and which is very important when I'm talking about the questions, framing the questions for EYSE. So these 3 are very important. So the next chapter, if I'm talking, is going to be area of parallelograms and triangles. So in this again they can ask you the questions based on parallelograms on the same base and between the same parallels, and in the same manner triangles on the same base and in between the same parallels. So these 2 important parts are there in this chapter from which they can ask you a question. Then next chapter is going to be circles. So when I'm talking about circle, then in circle they can ask you the questions from this particular 4 concept. They can ask you the questions from other topics also, but the probability of getting a question from this 4 subtopic is going to be higher. So when I'm talking about this chapter, then angle subtended by a chord at a point, from that they can ask you a question. The next concept is going to be circle through 3 points. Next concept, equal chords and their distances from the centers. And another concept is going to be angle subtended by an arc of a circle, and further cyclic quadrilateral, which is again going to be very important part of this chapter. Now next chapter is going to be construction, and from construction again they can ask you the questions based on data. Okay, if I'm talking about next chapter, it is going to be Heron's formula. Again, it is a very simple part and you can score +4 very easily from this chapter by keeping 2 formulas in your mind. First is Heron's formula, and second, you have to know how to apply Heron's formula for finding the areas of quadrilaterals. So this is going to be very important over here. The next chapter is going to be surface area and volume. So when I'm talking about this chapter, then you should be knowing each and every formula. Now I'm not going to say it is going to be a particular formula. They can ask you the question based on surface area of a cuboid, surface area of cube, surface area of right circular cylinder, surface area of right circular cone, surface area of a sphere, and in the same manner they can ask you the questions based from the volume for all the above figures. Now next chapter, if I'm going to talk, is going to be statistics. So if I'm talking about this particular chapter, then they can ask you the questions based from bar graphs, histograms and frequency polygons. And next important part is going to be measure of central tendency. That means they can ask you the questions based on mean, median and mode. So on these 2 concepts you should be practicing more. Now if I'm talking about the next chapter, then again scoring a mark +4 from this chapter is again going to be very easy. Why? Because you have to keep 2 concepts in your mind only, which is probability of PE, that means happening of event A, and the formula is going to be very easy, number of favorable things divided by total. And when I'm talking about not happening E, that is going to be 1 minus P of E. So these 2 concepts you have to keep in your mind and you have to practice the questions from here. Now if I'm talking about the next chapter, which is going to be proofs in mathematics. So from here they can ask you the questions based on mathematically acceptable statements and theorems, conjectures or axioms. So next chapter, if I'm going to talk over here, is going to be mathematical modeling, from where they can ask you the questions based on word problems such as upstream or downstream of a river. So these are going to be the important concept when I'm talking about class 10th. So students, अगर आप अपने नीट एंड जेई की प्रिपरेशन और भी बेहतरीन तरीके से करना चाहते हैं, then you should be downloading JEE and NEET test preparation app by Extramarks, in which you will be getting live lectures, interactive doubt solving sessions, adaptive testing platform. Along with that, you will be getting mock test, reports, ranking and insights, and most importantly, you will be getting recorded sessions by topmost faculties of India. So don't forget to download the JEE and NEET test preparation app by Extramarks. And I hope that you have understood each and every concept which I have explained for class 10th, class 9th and as well as for class 8, that how you have to prepare and what things you should be keeping in your mind for performing well in your EYSE examination. So I hope you will perform well, and all the very best for your EYSE examination. Thank you.